Good morning, everyone, and welcome to TFWA's opening workshop for this week that we are here in Singapore, Asia Pacific Travel Retail Pulse, a health check, and the innovation imperative. We're thrilled that you could join us this morning at the Agora. Throughout the week, we will host a variety of engaging sessions, all thanks to the wonderful support from the Singapore Economic Development Board. This opening workshop unveils an exclusive study conducted with Oliver Wyman, offering a fresh, data-driven view of how Asia Pacific drives the duty-free and travel retail and its recovery, but also how it is changing in profound ways. We will begin with key findings from Waldemar Yip and Jacky Louis, partners at Oliver Wyman. Then later on, I'll be joined in conversation by Nicolas Girotto, Chief Commercial Officer from Avolta, and Pedro Yip, Oliver Wyman partner and head of consumer, telco, and technology for Asia Pacific. The central question for us today is simple. As traffic resumes, are we ready to capture growth differently through sharper propositions, deeper traveler understanding, and more innovation? Without further ado, I would like to invite Waldemar and Jacky to present their findings. To begin our conversation, we will start with Jacky Louis.
Good morning, distinguished friends, colleagues, leaders of our industries. It's a great pleasure to be here to share with you our findings of this year's TFWA and Oliver Wyman reports. For the past 3 years, I think the world has lived in the shadow of recovery. We have tracked the tailwinds, we have counted returning flights, and we have celebrated the reopening of the borders as if the return of passengers would mean the return of our business and growth. But as we stand here in 2026 and looking at the data, we must confront with perhaps an uncomfortable truth that while our travelers have returned to the markets, the industry that they return no longer exists. And over the next 20 minutes, Waldemar and myself would like to walk you through 3 key aspects that we think will set the stage as our industry reset and look for pillars that define growth in the next decade. So first, we would look at the first aspect. It's the engines of growth that we face today has changed. For 20 years or so, I think the winning strategies for travel retail, especially in Asia, was simple. We followed the Chinese consumers, and we enjoyed an extended period of hyper growth, capitalizing on the enormous outbound Chinese tourism demands, and also the global pricing disparities. We believe, and I think a lot of you would recognize that that era has ended. While a lot of us was trying very hard to raise and build the Chinese playbook, we estimated that the next decade, China's contribution to Asia's travel retail growth would shift from a majority in the past 60-70% to a still important 1/3, right? So it's still going to be there. It's still probably going to be still the single largest market of growth. But the majority of growth that will drive our industry in Asia going forward, it's no longer going to come from one nationality, but a mix of different nationalities. And with that, it comes with diversity, it comes with differences in needs and behaviors. We will show you in a bit our research that says, for example, the Indian travelers and Chinese travelers are enormously different when you think about the cohort of consumers who would travel, where they would go, what they're buying, and how they're buying. And therefore, as a brand or operators ourselves, it's important for us to turn that China playbook into one that is agile enough to accommodate for that dynamics, and we have to do it fast. The second aspect that we're going to talk about is that our propositions for travel retail have become obsolete. There is one number in this report that is particularly concerning for me, and that is if you think about as travelers return to the market, their spend on tourism has already exceeded 2019 level. And yet, the spend on travel retail and duty-free has only captured about 70% of it. And that's 5 billion missing opportunities in Asia that we're missing today. Our consumers are already spending money on the new F&B concepts. They are doing all sorts of travel activities, but they're not buying duty-free. And we ask why. We would challenge that because our travel retail industries, or at least a good majority of our brands and operators today, are still too comfortable with a promotional-driven propositions. What we found from consumer is that while, yes, price is important, but increasingly, and we've already seen that in a lot of other retail channels, that they're demanding for value-based propositions. So instead of just thinking through how do I create pricing transparency and race across all the channels to build the best price, what consumers are asking is, what can you provide in travel retail that the consumers wouldn't get in other channels? And so we posed that challenge to the about 40 senior executives that we've interviewed in the last 3 months and asked, what do you do? And we would love to show you a couple of examples of brands who have enabled a value-based propositions, reporting that they're seeing significant uplift in the conversions and in the business. The last aspect that we'll go through today is that the rules of game in which we operate our business will change because of AI and because of innovations. When we ask our executive members of TFWA in a survey, a staggering 76% of you have agreed that innovations and AI is critical to your business. And yet, only about 20% of the business we've interviewed have already adopted some form of customer-facing AI solutions today. And so we would love to show you also a few ideas from our own on that aspect. And before we get into it, I think just a quick word of the basis of this report. We in Oliver Wyman has been tracking consumer sentiments and travel patterns for more than 10 years. But for this particular research together with TFWA, we've also conducted a consumer survey that focused on Indians and Chinese affluent consumers. We've sent a survey to all members of TFWA, and we've also conducted a lot of senior executives. So this is what they say. First, we will look into the engines of growth, and we'll start with China, and we'll get to the other nationalities. Despite the uncertainties in macro, this is the first time for a long time that we're seeing a definitive uplift in affluent consumer sentiments in China. That positivity, as we see, it's also translating into the intent to travel and the intent to spend. To give you a sense of that magnitude, since we start tracking Chinese affluent sentiments in 2022, this is the first year we've seen the index goes above 100, from 71 in 2025, which is bottoming, up 44 points to 115 this year. And as we try to unpeel what that number means, we see things that we like and we see areas of concern. Where we like it's the fact that this sentiment is correlating really well with our economy. And yes, of course, but it's more so than the factors that we're seeing from other geopolitical issues. And while the latter would have impacted, for example, your destinations and choices of growth, the intent to travel and the intent to spend is still very much backed up by, for example, the stock market, which has been doing well in 2026. What we also like is the fact that the sentiment is not short-term. We're tracking positivity both in the short term, but also in a longer term confidence in the economy. And that is important because as we look in the past, consumption growth and only happens, or typically only happens, when you see the confidence being strong, tracking both in short and long term. And that's what we're tracking in 2026. Where we have a bit of concern is the fact that this positive sentiments, it's still more driven by our baby boomers, much more so than our younger generations. And while some of that would have been affected by, for example, the job markets in China and with the graduates and all, it does raise concerns in our ability to recruit new customers in Asia. And I think recruitment has been a challenge for travel retails in the last few years. Then as we try to go from sentiments to travel, we've seen this start a little bit earlier ago that 1 in 3 affluent households that we've surveyed are saying they've already made an international trip this year or about to make one. And to think about that sort of magnitude, it's about 8 points more than 2023. And comparing to 2025, we're expecting 15 million more Chinese travelers coming up this year. And to give you a sense of reference, that's more than the entirety of Singapore in 2025. We've also tracked positivities a lot more in short haul. We all know Korea's been doing particularly well, but there's also good recovery in markets like Thailand, for example. Then as we go into spending, that picture looks a bit more diverse. We're tracking good positivity with prestige beauty and luxury apparel. But when we look at leather goods, for example, and watches, that it still remains a bit soft. What we also see as you look at the graph here is that it diverges a lot by consumer cohort. Right? For example, you have 35% of Gen Zs who are willing to spend more on watches, but you only see 12% in millennials. So as you unpeel these numbers, there's a lot more nuances to it. And that's just a couple of double clicks. I want to give you a glimpse of what we covered in the Asia Health Pulse Check. If you're interested, there is a lot more granular analysis that you'll find in the full report, so feel free to grab a copy or download it from the TFWA and Oliver Wyman websites. But if I take a step back, then when we started with the first aspect, it's really about not just China, but a shift of engines from China to the other nationalities. And so if you think about the next decade, we like to divide that growth into 3 pillars, essentially. You have China being still 1/3 of it important, but you have a second pillar, which is growing very fast, and that's India and Korea. India in particular, we're tracking that there will be a 4 times increment in their spend over the next decade. And with that pictures, I think it brings us a critical topic that we really need to change our playbook to accommodate that diversity. And take India as examples, there is a huge difference versus Chinese when you look at the cohort of customers who travel, where they go, what they buy. For instance, our Indian consumers are much more Gen Z driven, much younger. They like to buy gifts, they like to buy wines and spirits, and about 70-80% of the spend happens in the arrival of the travel. And that's completely different with the Chinese. And if you then throw into, for example, Korea and other in the place, you get an even bigger mix. So even now, as I give you these examples from our study, I'm already at risk of stereotyping a little bit and generalizing a little bit, because the consumers that we've interviewed in India, it's definitely going to be just the tip of the iceberg. When you think about the immense of the new customers who will come in the next decade, and then you think about all the other markets. So what we really need to do is then to look at category by category, airport by airport, who would be the right customer X that would come in the next decade, and then how do we provide the right proposition, a compelling proposition for them to buy. And that takes us into our second aspect, which is that our retail proposition is becoming obsolete. And I'll give you Waldemar, who will take us through that.
So good morning, everyone. I hope that was a good overview about the status of the industry. I'm going to actually speak a little bit about a bit of an alarm bell. So the good news is, we think there's a 5 billion upside opportunities we can all capture if we do the right thing. Bad news, the travel retail industry really has trailed the traveler traffic and also the traveler spend by at least 20%. Why? Well, if you look at, there are several reasons. First, when you look at the travelers, how they spend their money on luxury products, especially Chinese, right? You do see a lot of them since COVID has been spending more at home. At the same time, used to be kind of the cash-rich, time-poor, trapped at an airport, shopping is the only mission. Not true anymore. You're actually seeing a lot of competition for the travel time in the airport. And we are seeing travelers spending less and less time on shopping in the airport. So let me just dig into the first reasons a little bit. Chinese, as an example, right, which used to account for 2/3 of the travel retail spend. When you look at how much of their luxury spend is spent in overseas, used to be more than 50% before COVID, now only down to 25%, so less than half. Why? Brands have invested significantly in building very nice, good boutique in domestic China. COVID has changed the traveler behavior. They are used to really spending and buying at home. Hainan, we have seen very positive growth since the second half of 2025. And this is actually pushed and encouraged by the Chinese government. And when you look at the duty-free, overseas duty-free spends, right, it has been coming down. And that's actually quite a significant decrease. And for the travelers, they also changed a lot their behavior. Shopping used to be the #1 mission. When you look at today's, when we ask the travelers, only 70% of them say that shopping is the #1 objective when they travel overseas, especially more severe for the young Gen Z customers, travelers. So you do see we are facing a lot of challenges and competition from the domestic, from the Hainan duty-free, and also the change of the Chinese travelers' behaviors. And I think another important point is that I mentioned before, right? Shopping used to be a very, very top of mind mission in the airport when they're stuck there with nothing else to do. Not true anymore. If you look at, if I just skip one page, right, this gives you a bit of a sense. Just in less than 1 year, when you look at Chinese and Indian travelers, the amount of time they spend in airport for shopping, 20% down. 20% down in less than 12 months. That's an alarming signal. And when you look at, the kind of variances across different airports, even higher differences. When we look at the top of the rank, Singapore, this actually doesn't include Jewel, by the way. This is only, within the security area, versus the one at the other airport, right? There's a 2x difference, at least 2x difference. So this talks a lot about, what we can actually do much better. Because what is happening is really that, when you look at, when you look at what the traveler can actually spend their time in the airport, it used to be shopping as a #1 mission, but you have airport lounges, some of them offering spa services that is actually catching a lot of the time for the travelers. You have much improved food and beverages. So unless we significantly improve the shopping offering, we improve on the SKU, we improve on something that drives excitement, travelers actually have a lot of things to do in the airport. They don't necessarily have to just spend the time on shopping. And in a way, right, this is also reflected a lot in the performance across different airports. You do see that, we do measure two things, right? Conversion rate and the spend per passengers. A lot of airports are very good, if you look at Singapore, Hong Kong, right, in offering very good luxury spend. Drive up the spend per capita, but really not great for conversion, right? So you're looking at this airport at a range of 15%. Slightly better airport, like Istanbul, they can drive up the conversion to up to 25%, still not good enough. If we look at an offline good department store, right, typically we're looking at a range of 60, if not 70% conversion rate. So what it's trying to say really is that we have a lot of room for improvement in driving up the conversion, broadening the coverage to cover every aspect of the traveler's need, and also at the same time, right, maintaining our spend per passengers. We can find a way to do it together. And how do we do it? Where do we get started? I would argue increasing our traveler time is one aspect. But what is also important is that when you look at this industry, in the past, we live on the proposition that we offer very competitive prices honestly, the competitive prices is a little bit being eroded by the transparency of prices. What is shown on this slide, right, on the right-hand side is just we asked a 16-year-old intern just to write a script and post it on a little red book. Immediately, within a few minutes, a very comprehensive list of all the different prices, all the different type of promotions being offered, what type of promotion is being offered at the different places. It's all very transparent these days. With the help of AI, people can get it instantly. So just offering a price competitive offering is not good enough because it's almost a given, right? We have to do more than that. I think the third thing I would like to also highlight is that we do, as Jacky mentioned, right, we are moving into an era where we are not just a simply Chinese playbook. We need to have a Chinese plus Indian, maybe plus Korean playbook. And when you look at different airports, how they cater to the different type of travelers, you see the diversity. The chart here is trying to show you the satisfaction rating by the Chinese and Indian travelers across different airports. You have airports like Tokyo, Hong Kong, very much frequent by the Chinese travelers, very good satisfaction by the Chinese traveler rating. You know, Chinese speaking shop associate, Chinese signage, SKU and offering catered to the Chinese traveler. What happened is that, you know, if you kind of flip and ask the Indian traveler, are they happy with that offering? Not really, right? We're not really catering enough. On the other hand, right, if you look at some of the other airports like Bangkok, Singapore, which has a lot of, you know, Indian travelers pass by, there's actually a lot of room for us to improve our offering and enhance the satisfaction to the Chinese traveler. So again, right, it speaks to the fact that we, as a whole industry, needs to speak and cater to a world where there will be a more diverse, you know, group of travelers coming across from different nationality, from different needs, across different generations. So a simple one-size-fits-all playbook will not help, right? It would not really help increase the spend, increase the time, increase the conversion. So I guess I just want to leave you with a bit of a note of what would success look like in this industry. I think we have some examples here, just leaving a little bit of a food for thought. When you look at, you know, kind of how do we actually cater the offering to create some excitement, I think we have seen examples. I mean, we are using, you know, the Kit Kat Formula One, you know, sponsorship as an example, right? Create something that is actually the whole activation, the whole offering that is catered to the local market, catered to specific occasion or festive seasons. This gives the travelers a reason to buy. This gives them a bit of a social currency to talk about, you know, in social media. This gives them something to show off to their friend and family when they return home, something unique, right? Loyalty programs is another one. I know a lot of the operators are already working on this. I think we have seen examples, really the best-in-class examples, where when you offer loyalty programs, you see the heavy spenders spending 3x more than the average non-members. There's a lot of upside. You may not capture all the 3x, but it definitely helps you a much better understanding of your heavy spenders and the way to serve them. We need to ensure that, you know, we have the whole data sharing across the ecosystems. You know, the travel retail is no longer simply just, you know, one offline shopping experience. It probably started already before the traveler arrived at the airport through online, through pre-ordering. You can offer click and collect. You can offer post-delivery after traveling. And all this helps a more seamless omni-channel experience to the travelers. And at the same time, sorry, give you a richness of the data. It's still a pain point in the industry, but everybody is working on this, and I think there's a lot of room for us to do better in terms of understanding the travelers' behavior, segmentation, really unearth the potential for us to use data to offer more personalized offering, for us to improve our experience to the travelers. Let me end with a little bit of topics on innovations and AI. I think every conversation these days cannot end without touching the AI topics. It's interesting because we asked the executive to give in their input, right? How much do they value innovation? 3/4 of them are saying that this is important, but only 40% are saying that it's a critical aspect or something that they are putting in serious investment or putting in the proper resources and attention. And what is even more staggering is that only 20% are saying that they're adopting some sort of customer-facing AI. We all know it's still early stage, no doubt. But I think at this point, right, everybody is racing in order to make sure that we understand and have the right formula. I'm going to show you a video just to see how AI really would drive the whole customer journey. This is an example of a traveler in the airport in Hong Kong that's been stuck for 2 hours just because the flight got delayed. And what happened is that the traveler is asking AI, "I'm stuck. What can I do in the Hong Kong airport?" Now, the question here is really how to ensure that shopping is one of the lists suggested by AI. Because what happened is that when you look at what the AI is suggesting, it is suggesting the Sky Bridge in Hong Kong Airport, the Sky Garden. It so happened because this traveler has talked to the AI, her husband's birthday is coming up, and she's struggling to find the right birthday presents for her husband. The AI suggested in the third list, maybe you can go shopping for your husband's birthday presents. And that's where shopping come up. But we could have done a better job, right? If we create something exciting, something as a destination, AI would have suggested maybe there's something unique in the airport for you to shop. Now, after AI suggested shopping and the traveler say, "Great idea, let me try to find something for my husband for his birthday presents." AI suggested a few different types of gifts, tech, lifestyle, alcohol. Great, right? Alcohol is what my husband really liked. So, the traveler actually chose whiskey. AI very quickly came up with a very comprehensive list, different type of whiskey, different price point, different pros and cons. And finally, guess what recommendation AI actually gave to the travelers? Give it a second to work it out. It come to a Japanese whiskey. And there is some specific reasons because, they know that there is an airport-exclusive Japanese whiskey being offered in the Hong Kong International Airport. And hence, it gives a reason for the traveler to buy something that you cannot easily buy in downtown or other offline or online retails. So that's why she picked, the Japanese whiskey as an option. And finally, the AI basically pointed her directly to the shops offering the kind of, the right promotion, the right, SKU, and even kindly reminded the travelers that for this shop in Duty Zero, you can actually, ask for a special additional gift and special packaging, for her husband's birthday. So all good, right? But I think we need to ensure that we really embed it in the journey. Otherwise, easily it can drop off the list, and the product we want to really encourage the shopper to buy would probably not even make it to the top of the list. So let me end, before I hand over to the panel discussion, right? A little bit of a call for action, right? I think I started off by saying there's really a 5 billion opportunity, if not higher. What do we really need to do? I think I just want to offer 3 thoughts here. One, rethink your proposition. Understand your traveler mix, understand what they're looking for. Make sure that your service experience, your products is catered. It's unique enough that the travelers see that there is a reason for him or her to come to buy. Rethink, how we design the whole journey. It doesn't have to be just offline. It can be an omni-channel. It can start even before the airport travel actually started. Reimagine your operating models. I mean, there's a lot. We have been living in a very protected environment, but when we actually move into an environment where we do face competition of all sorts, make sure that we are efficient. We are doing a very data and power models where your business will suggest to you what's the right assortment level, what's the right promotion plan, and how to actually cater a very unique experience to the travelers. So, very high level, but something as a food for thought. I'll leave the time for the panel to talk a bit in more specific details, right? What does it mean in the real industry? And also, some question and answer, from the audience as well.
I'd like to start our discussion on the business climate, the reset that you have presented today. Before we get into specific markets and consumer segments, The report is optimistic in places, but it is not naive. It points to a world where volatility is no longer a passing storm, but part of the operating system. I'd like to get your take once again, Jacky and Nicola. Are our business models still designed for stability when the market is now defined by disruption?
Thanks, Michelle. I think what we're saying here is yes, your business model is always evolved. You always see that it evolves, but the speed that our business model in travel retail are evolving, comparing to the speed that our consumers are evolving, the speed that our other retail formats are evolving, we're not fast enough, and we need to step up massively on that front. And I'll offer a few observations and sort of how we can sort of adjust for this volatility, right? I think the first thing is we need to move from single playbook into agility that can absorb this diversity. Number two, I think we need to increase our speed in terms of response to the market. So if you take demand forecast, for example, I think we all do that, but the forecast is not always perfect. The question is, with this volatility, how do you create an organization and capabilities so that you can adjust to it very, very rapidly and then win from that volatility? Because what it gives you is a chance as a window for brands who are able to move faster than the competitors. This is your space where you can capture the opportunities in times of this volatility. Number three is, I think volatility needs to be addressed not only with travel retail, but as a whole channel in organizations. And we need fast and bold decisions to align decisions together. And we're not doing particularly well today in travel retail yet in most of the brands. And I think last about the volatility is it does vary categories by categories. We're seeing, for example, F&B players a lot more creative, agile than that. And we all understand, for example, in luxury, it's a bit harder for us to build a new products and services, but we can, with a more collaborative model, adjust our channel experiences across TR and other spaces to accommodate for that.
Nicola, how about you? Is our market still, is it designed for the disruption that we're facing?
I think it's not.
Okay.
Actually, we are not designed for volatility. So if we look at the series of events we have been through in the last years, this is becoming our new normal. And if we look at our model right now, whether it is designed or not to face this kind of events, no. We have long contracts, mags, we have quite long lead time supply chain, we have brands, an offering with brand which is quite set. And what it requires in order to face this new normal is flexibility. So the question is how we bring flexibility to our model. This is what we should pursue. So flexibility in our supply chain, we need to have much shorter lead times. We need to get flexibility also in our assortment. I think it was very interesting to see and to hear from you how the mix of customers in our portfolio is evolving. So having an offering which is set and is not moving is not an option anymore. So we need to have this flexibility in our offering. And last point is diversification. So we are making the assumption that what we have been through will not change. We will see a continuity of events like the one, unfortunately, that we have been facing in the last years. And the best answer to that is diversification. So geographical diversification, diversification also in terms of business lines. This is what is making us more resilient. So these are the two directions I think that we should be taking, that in Avolta we are fully embracing, which is making our model more flexible and diversify at the maximum.
You spoke about evolution, and I think the industry has been so hopeful about the return of the traveling Chinese consumer. But the report clearly states that they are back, but they are different. So, with that said, the question of resilience brings us back naturally to the Chinese traveling consumer. Do you see the recent changes in Chinese consumers' travel preferences and luxury spending patterns as temporary or as a lasting structural shift? In that case, what should brands and travel retailers do? Jacky, you expanded on this earlier on your presentation. Care to give us your thoughts?
I think when you look at Chinese, the travel preference is always hard because it's impacted by geopolitics, and that's one thing you just can't control it as a brand. So there is definitely that aspect there. I see a couple of silver linings. So one, it's always cynical rather than permanent. Right? If you look at Korea in the past, if you look at the recovery of Thailand, so at some point it would come back, right? And so that's one. And two, it affects your choices of destinations, but the spend, the demand, if you look at Chinese consumption, it's still there. And you just have to be flexible when you think about your travel retail and maybe also the other channels to capture that in some places. One, I think, example that we've seen, which may be worth mentioning, it's Japan, when you see that they have a very acute impact from geopolitical tensions, but then they're able to, as Nicolas, you said, diversify, have different mix of customers, and then very quickly, I think that the market comes back from that. So I think that it's definitely possible to address in the ways, and when we think about what brands need to do, one, I think, key element, I'll try to challenge, I think, our friends in travel retail, is to take a more strategic role in this. So think less about very transactional, I have a license free, I have a assortment space, and think through like how do I create the right consumer journey across, and how do travel retail plays a role in that. And if you focus the business model in that sense, you're much better in sort of adjusting and putting the agility when the volatility comes. I think the other bit of that is the leverage of AI. We talked a bit about AI just now. Is that the ability to leverage AI gives you the capability to process in a much faster way and enable you to adapt and adjust much faster that way. So I think the acceleration of use of AI internally and also customer facing, it's critical in that sense. And I think the last point, it's perhaps to push a little bit in terms of how do you create the integrated, what we call CRM or data, right, for the customers, because as the volatility goes in, you're seeing more and more changes. And in the past, a bit of a luxury, but it's very much relying on relationship with your essays and all. But in the future, I think especially in travel retail, that is a lot harder. And you would need to build that collaborations in data in order to be able to better that.
We received a question from the floor on just practicalities and advice on, I guess, in brand assortments, how to re-engage the Chinese consumer and make travel retail compelling once again. Pedro, maybe you'd like to take this question?
Sure. I think, as the report suggests, that the customer base is really diversifying. It used to be everything is about the Chinese consumer, so we cater for the Chinese consumer. Now the Indians are traveling more and more, and so are the Koreans. So what that means is people going to your store will be diversifying, and you really need to study not only one group of them, but 3 groups of them in order to understand what they genuinely want to buy. And one thing that I would say is AI can do very well is to analyze that rich data that you may have, to analyze airport by airport, the mix of travelers, to analyze what they love to buy, cater your assortment, as well as the share of space for your different product series, to make sure the experience are welcoming for all 3 or even many groups of customers. that you have not seen before COVID. I think this is one key use case of AI to really fine-tune what we can offer in the store.
China still matters enormously, but the report says its share of future growth will be smaller. I'd like to ask you, Nicolas, is the industry emotionally ready to move beyond the China playbook?
I think that we need to put our emotions aside. This is more strategic than anything else. I think it's healthy. The situation that we have been experienced before, having our industry relying so much on one group of passengers, was not that healthy. So now the question is how to transition. And this is where the challenge is. We were used to have a continuous growth of passenger of one single nationality providing a very large SPP compared to the other, and this is changing. But in the end, I think this is something which is very healthy. As you know, I was, my last 10 years, was managing a brand that was heavily relying on Chinese customer. And I had discussion at the time with the authorities in Shanghai, and they were telling me that they consider that it was not normal to have this high proportion of customers buying luxury abroad, and to have something like 80% of the luxury consumption happening outside of China. So this redomestication of luxury spend is something that also has been pursued by the authorities. But this is something which is, I consider, to be healthy. So as a retailer, it's much better to rely on multiple groups and profiles of customers than only on a single one. So what do we need to do in order to cope with this situation? Again, it's about being more flexible. It's about understanding much better our customer. I really like the example that you show about KitKat and Formula One. All these initiatives obviously are aimed at improving the experience, but with AI, because we were talking about one of our concessions, with AI we are able to understand also what these activations are triggering. So we have been observing that dwell time, for instance, is increasing. We have been observing that conversion is increasing thanks to these activations. So it's a combination of understanding the customer better and leveraging technology in order to get all what we can from the wealth of data that we have in our industry, which is, by the way, quite underused, because this is a paradox. We are an industry with a wealth of data that domestic industry will dream of.
Yes.
At the same time, we are underusing it. The next frontier for us, and this is the direction in which in Avolta we are working tirelessly, is about how we are making the most of the data that we are collecting, and how we can transform this into increased SPP, into improve the customer experience,
Yes.
into a better customer journey, and being able to drive our customer from one business line, for instance, F&B to retail. So this is where we will create the growth in the future.
Now, still very much and absolutely important in the customer journey is price transparency. That brings us to another long-standing assumption of the price. For decades, duty-free had a simple promise: better price. But when AI and social media can compare prices instantly, what replaces that advantage? Pedro, I'd like to get your take on this.
I actually have a slightly more positive view on that. Is when price transparency becomes so easy to get, it may actually help our industry, but in the short term. Because as long as we still price competitive enough, we will always show up very well in the results, no matter what AI engine you use to you ask. But that might not be long lasting, because as Waldemar mentioned, that actually a lot of the brands has really adjusted the prices, domestic versus travel retail. So that advantage is also eroding. And so transparency at some point in time might no longer be our advantage, and AI could actually make it so obvious to the travel retailers. And so, to Jacky's point, is we definitely need to find something more than price to win the customers in the long run.
And on a retailer's perspective, Nicolas.
This is a complex topic because on the one hand, yes, you have transparency, much better. I just encourage you to do the exercise that I've been doing a few weeks ago, using my phone, Perplexity, taking a picture of a product, being in store and asking just a plain question, is it a good price? And it's incredible how articulate the answer is, giving me different options. Yes, it's a good price if you are in a rush. However, if you have time, I advise you buying downtown, da, 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 da. Okay, so it's incredible. It's very articulated. The second point is what surprised me the most is two things. Is first that customers right now are questioning a lot our value proposition. And at the same time, when we look at the difference between price perception and actual positioning, there is always a very significant gap. So what I'm meaning by that is that lowering price is not always the answer. It's about communicating better. I will not give you the data points because we are talking about confidential information, but on certain of our stores in key airports, there is a significant gap that can go up to 10 to 15 points between the perceived positioning, which is much higher than the actual positioning. So we need to do our better job in communicating the price, in having the customer perceiving the value. Then, as you rightly said, price is only a hygiene factor. When we look at the reasons to buy in travel retail, price and value remains first, gifting, self-indulgence, and so on. But however, price has to be part of our equation. However, it's not sufficient anymore. It's not sufficient because nobody wants to buy anymore on gondolas on the same good old way of buying. We need to provide, and I know that these words have been used and overused, we need to provide experience to the customer. The thing is that how we are making this happening, because this is where it's difficult, because it costs money, because it requires structural modification in our offering. So it's how we are making it happening. But our customers are craving for that. They are telling us, and the numbers that you have been showing about the lack of interest of the newest generation, this is something that we are observing on a day-to-day. They have in their pocket, and we have in our pocket, entertainment powerhouses, and we are competing against that. So if we are not able to provide engaging shopping experience, they will turn on their phone, and I understand that. So this is where we are putting our efforts right now. What are the experiences that we're providing? What are the engagements before the trip, during the trip, and after the trip? This is what will make the difference in the future.
I think it's now the perfect time to talk about the missed opportunity. And this is where the commercial question becomes very concrete. The report identifies a US $5 billion missed opportunity. Is that mainly a demand problem, a proposition problem, or simply an execution problem? Jacky, would you like to take this question?
Sure, Michelle. Well, I'm a consultant, so I'll always say it's a combination of the three. I think the demand question is that it's not about affordability. We've seen that sentiment improvement. We've seen that intent to spend. We've actually tracked consumption increasing in other channels as well. I think it's that the demand generation from travel retail, it's weak. And I think that links to what Nicolas was saying on that we're not creating the right products, we're not creating enough compelling reasons for people to buy. And I think I resonate a little bit with, I think, Nicolas, your point about it. While pricing is transparent, there is, I think, a bandwidth of pricing disparities that consumers can accept if you give them the right reason to, right? You're traveling, you're in a moment of spend, you're at an airport, you wanted a local sense of place and all that. And how do we create that out? So it's not an affordability issue, it's about how do we demand and give a more compelling reasons for people to buy. And similarly, I think it links to the proposition, so I'm not going to repeat all that we've just been talking through. But I think we need to think about the roles that TL plays in a broader consumer journey. But I'll leave it at that. In terms of execution, I think I'll summarize in 3 things. It's, which was well said. How do we drive data collaborations? I think this is critical. How do we drive communication with our local markets, right? So TL not being a standalone BU, but working together as a brand to bring that sort of journey together, and how to use AI faster, right? I think those are the pillars we see that would take us to hopefully more than the 5 billion, because if you look at then the gaps versus not just the traffic, but tourism spend, there is even more opportunities there for us to grab.
We received a few questions regarding the Indian traveling consumer. Are there any specific changes that retailers, airport operators should cover to enrich the consumer experience so that they spend more time versus the existing one? And also, are there any push that they need to do in order to engage them further? Who would like to take this on?
I can start. Changing the customer experience again is something that has been said and again and again, but the question is how we are doing it. And to me, the question is about the financials, because providing new categories, providing experiential spaces into store, providing non-core categories for retailers that have usually lower marginality. It's really about the question of financials. And we know the level of the concession fees, the mags, and so on. So it's about partnering brands, airports, and operators to understand what do we want to achieve for the traveler, what is the kind of experience, and everyone has to carefully look at the impact on the financials of every one of us, and in good faith, discuss and try to find reasonable agreements. And this would be, in my opinion, an enabler of the improvement regarding the customer experience that we can provide into store. So this is a call that I will launch.
Now, for the last topic I'd like to cover, because it's a big part of the report, is AI and the innovation imperative. It is a topic that it's an ongoing discussion in every retail channel, okay? And it was a topic that was covered yesterday during our conference, and the need to change and embrace this new technology. And it was surprising to see that in terms of adoption, your observation reads that there's only been 20% of that in our industry. If the issue is partly conversion, partly relevance, and partly agility, then technology inevitably enters that discussion. But AI is often spoken about in very broad terms. The real question is more practical. How does a business prepare? Where should it start? And what should it be careful not to get wrong? This is all part of the bigger conversation, really, in every industry in terms of adopting AI, understandably. But for our industry, how should different businesses prepare themselves for the age of AI? And what are the risks to watch out for? Pedro?
I think there are 3 things. One is we are senior executives in the industry. We ourselves need to get comfortable with AI. We spoke to, when we spoke to clients, some of them will say, oh, what if AI give the wrong information to my customers? What if? What if? And this tends to constrain ourselves to say, well, let's wait until someone cracks the problem. I become a fast follower because there are so many uncertainties around the technology that I'm not sure about. So that stops me from being innovative on that front. So I think that is the first thing we need to get comfortable with the technology, number one. Number two is I totally agree with what Nicolas said just now. Is we need to think about what is the experience we want to give to the traveler? What would you want to achieve with the traveler? Because AI is just an enabler. We need to think about what is the experience we want to provide in an economic way, so that then we work our way around and say, how can AI help to enable that? Not the other way around. Technology is not the solution. Technology is only part of the solution. So the second one will be the use cases, the genuine use cases that will actually enhance the customer's experience, not for the sake of it. Third, I think is data that we touched upon. Is quite often these great ideas that we have cannot be achieved because AI does not have the data required to enable that. And so getting the right data in place to enable those use cases would be key, I would say.
Just to close our conversation, and I'd love to get your parting words on this. Let's say we meet here 3 years from now, and you're asked to discuss the health check of travel retail in Asia Pacific. What will be the first thing that you will say, Jacky?
Have you used AI?
Okay.
I think that this sets a stage, and if we don't make a bold move at this, right, in some forms, then yeah, we're not really accepting the challenge that the generations has give us for.
Nicolas?
For me, there is a lot to learn from this region. I think that this is Asia Pacific is one of the regions which is the most tech savvy. So I think that importing in the Western world all the best practices that you have in this part of the region would be beneficial to our business. But in 2 years from now, I think that having transitioned the change that we have discussed today about the Chinese customer and being able to manage these different profiles of customers that now are representing our new normal, if we are able to do that properly, I think it will be a win. And lastly, on AI, is having implemented an AI in a way that favors the human interaction, because we are in retail, and this is what customers are looking for. So everything that can make the burden of our staff in store less heavy, in order to focus on the human interaction, this is something that will deliver value. So this is something that in Avolta we are looking on a constant basis, in store, but also in the back of house, how to improve through AI and make our staff in store really able to engage with the customer, knowing them better, but also having more time with them.
Pedro?
For me, I hope in 3 years' time, our industry will become more towards from push model towards a more consumer pull model. What that means is being more consumer driven than we have ever before. And I think it's critical for our industry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us close to our workshop this morning. Thank you very much to Oliver Wyman. We really appreciate this collaboration and this very timing report. The reports are available for all of you, so don't forget to pick up a copy. And the presentation will also be posted on the TFWA website as part of the TFWA 2026 Asia Pacific Summit highlights. Pedro, Nicolas, Jacky, we're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Michele.
Michele.
Thank you.